Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, September 14th, 2022. This is the regular weekly public business meeting of the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners being conducted at the Commissioners Conference Room at the Courthouse in Newport and also being live streamed on our YouTube channel. All three commissioners are present, and that constitutes a quorum of the board. Next, we move on to adoption of the consent calendar. These are routine items or items discussed at previous meetings. Do I have a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent. Were you okay? All right. I will make a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
And before we vote, I would like to ask our administrator, Mr. Johnston, to highlight item G1 in the consent calendar.
Chair Hall, Commissioners, in June of this year, we were approached by Business Oregon with a grant for the purposes of improvement for the fairgrounds on a fairgrounds building, but it had to be a capital improvement project. I want to thank the three of you for your sage advice and direction. Because of it, we were able to acquire this grant for the 4-H building, a new roof, new skin, new doors, and it will complete out the concrete pad or flooring inside the building. And we've had bids on it. Recall a couple things. When we received this, we had less than a week to put all of this together. So I tip my hat and compliment everybody for their direction on this. And then we had to go through a hurry up and wait. But in doing so, we did issue bids, and we have an official bid that is fulfilled this requirement. So you will be seeing that shortly, and work will begin hopefully before the end of the year.
Wonderful news.
I was just going to add that the 4-H building we're doing for the public, that is where the Master Gardener plant sale is held every year, and everyone goes and gets their tomatoes. So it's not just used for 4-H. Yeah.
Good news. Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote on approval of the consent calendar as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, it's so ordered. Now we move down to decision and action items. And Mr. Kenyon, you want to come on up in case there are any questions from the board on the first two items? So the first one is declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions upon the owner of property 324 Worldmark Drive.
Good morning, Commissioners. Roy Kenyon, Public Works Director for Lincoln County. Last week, I brought to you kind of multiple things here. One was the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions for a riprap revetment in the Glen Eden Beach area. Asking for a signature on it. And also along with that was a request to allow me to represent the county for a signature on the Ocean Shores permit that goes through Oregon Parks. And there's a couple other documents that need to be signed. And so I made a presentation. Well, basically what it comes down to is in order to protect Worldmark Resort, the riprap revetment is going to have to extend north across of a 30-foot easement on the north end of that property and tie into riprap that already exists on the north side of it. And because it's an encroachment across the public right of way, they need our permission to do so.
All right, questions or comments from the board?
No, I feel we thoroughly got into it last week.
Exactly, well vetted. So I would entertain a motion, please.
I'll move we approve the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions upon the owner of the property 324 Woodmark Drive.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimously approved. Mr. Kenyon, you also have item 2 on this agenda, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department Ocean Shore Permit.
That is the same set of documents.
Oh, okay.
Basically what it is we have the CCNR that'll be tied to the deeds of the properties going forward. But it also, Worldmark has to obtain a permit through Oregon Parks and Recreation to actually put this riprap on the beach. And so that is a portion that basically, I guess you just approved me to sign off on that, and then that'll go on into the Oregon Parks.
So
So
you,
this,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, so this really didn't have to be a separate agenda item?
It was, no, I did not.
Okay. Commissioner Jacobson?
I was gonna ask the same thing.
Yeah.
So we're good.
Okay. Then I guess
Well, I have
we're,
a- I'm
oh,
sorry,
go
I have a
ahead,
question.
Commissioner Hunt.
So all we're doing is giving you the authority to sign off for the county on the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department's permit.
That is correct.
Okay, so this really isn't an action of the county. It's just your concurrence
It's,
with what
yeah,
the
because,
state wants to do.
yeah,
Because they
all
own the
of the
beaches.
all of the property owners have to be represented on the application for the permit. And because Lincoln County has a public right of way there, we're listed as a property owner. That's not necessarily exactly legally correct, but we're recognized as the owner of the right of way, and therefore they need to have a signature. And in the past, I've always been basically the one who has been given permission to sign for the county on these.
We're one of the parties impacted by
Yes.
this section.
Right.
And we do have a map on the screen, and also we have copies here essentially showing us the property.
Yes, and like I spoke to before, I actually visited the site.
Mhm.
I could not find any actual access using that right away, other than going through private property and walking through the brush. 500 feet north is actually a well-used, nice improved beach access that I believe that everybody in the community must use, because they're obviously not using the one to the south.
Okay. Any further comments, questions from the board? We're ready to move on to the next topic. All right, thank you, Mr. Kenyon.
So this will come back for consent next week.
No, I think we just did it.
Well, so Chair will sign off on it today.
Okay,
Perfect.
all
And-
done.
And I'll sign off on the rest of it today also.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Sounds good to me.
Like to invite Sheriff Landers to come forward. This is adoption of an order authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the Lincoln County Sheriff and the City of Depoe Bay. And something, again, we pretty thoroughly vetted last week, and I understand the agreement, the intergovernmental agreement. This document is slightly different from what we reviewed last week, but only in terms of correcting a few typographical errors. The substance isn't changed. Is that correct?
Yeah, Kurt, for the record, Curtis Landers, Lincoln County Sheriff. Yeah, there were just a couple of typos that were pointed out in both the attachment and in the actual document. So I think it was section 13 in cost. Second paragraph, there were 2 periods. And then in attachment A, there were 2. In the first bullet, it said, but no limited, instead of but not limited. And in the third bullet, the A was still left in review mode, not in accepted mode.
Again, we've pretty thoroughly vetted it last week, but any comments or further questions for the sheriff?
My only comment would be, we had a long discussion last week just about staffing levels and making sure that we can get back to our normal service level before we take on additional contracts. I guess I would just maybe like to have some type of update, maybe like in February, which is a couple of months before the contract was supposed to start, I think in April, just to kind of see where we were at.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
That'd be good timing with our annual report process.
great.
Excellent.
Yeah, I share Commissioner Jacobson's concerns. I mean, the fact that we've, or you, in your authority as sheriff, have reduced services, concerns me. And frankly, last week you talked about the fact that the number of calls have doubled. What is the number? I mean, 2 to 4 is a doubling.
Yeah, from, I believe it's 2007 to 2017, it went from about 13,000 to 27,000. I talked about kind of during the media release. When we went through that, there's actually a chart that I put together for a budget presentation when I was the administrative lieutenant under Sheriff Dotson at the time. That's and I don't have that with me, but I can definitely get that to you in email. But it is a very telling document because it shows the number of patrol deputies that we've had over the years, and it shows what our projected calls for service were going to be, and for 2017. And I had presented that document back in 2007. I'll get the dates and send this to you because it's very, very informational. At the time, I had projected 28,000 calls for service in the year 2017, and we actually missed that by 5,000 on the other side, or 4,000. It ended up being 32,000, and those were projected calls that we far exceeded. Now, we had come back down a little bit with COVID when we weren't taking basically anything or stopping any cars, doing any kind of proactive, but now we see that trend again, circling right back up again. So I will send you those documents if you're interested, just so you can kind of see where I was going from with the announcement of doubling the calls for service.
So what's the current number? 27,000?
I would have to confirm that. 27,000 for, yeah.
For the unincorporated sheriff.
For the calls that we take, yes.
Yeah.
But those are also calls not directly to the sheriff's office. They're calls to the 911 center.
No, those are calls that we've taken. Our calls and our self-initiated activity that our deputies are responding to. That's ours from our annual report.
Walk me through the difference. I guess I'm confused
What's that?
there. So the question, there was a question on, were those calls in the 911 center? And you said, no, those are calls that we take. And that
So
got
911 calls
lost.
are fire, medical, Newport, Lincoln, or not necessarily Lincoln City, but all the areas in the county. So we don't respond to all those calls. But 911 calls are going to far exceed what we actually take.
Sorry to
in the
interrupt,
county.
Commissioner Hunt.
Well, I'm confused. So what you're saying is those 27,000 calls are calls to the 911 center that result in action by your deputies.
Correct. Or self-initiated by us. Yes.
Okay.
They could be self-initiated, so they also aren't going to. But they're not all the 911 calls that come into the center because we don't respond to
No,
medical
I
calls.
understand that.
Kind of look at it as, I guess, one way that to put it is it's like, IT refers to all the trouble tickets that come in and how they base the number of employees they need. Look at these calls as trouble tickets that we respond to or initiate.
Okay, but again, those are calls that are going into 911 that are then referred to you, for the most part, within
Yeah,
the case.
You mentioned self-initiated.
They're not
Would that be like
necessarily a 911 call, because it could be self-initiated. If
Like a
deputy
traffic
sees
stop?
a DUI, then
Mhm.
they can pull that over. It's not going to be a 911 call.
What
theoretically.
percentage would be self-initiated?
I'd have to find those numbers for you.
Okay. All right. Well, bottom line is I'm very concerned about this policy and your actions. I mean, apparently if the cities are willing to pay more, they get full service, but typical property taxpayer in our county gets a little lower service or reduced service. Those are your words. And
Well,
I find that troubling.
I guess one thing I was going to say is last week you talked about, and I forgot what you call it, but like kind of a comprehensive staffing review or something to that effect. I forgot the language you used, but by a third party. And I really think we should do that.
I never said third party. I
Oh, okay.
said that we can analyze that based on looking at other agencies, how they've done, like with their community services deputies. I think if we look at, I don't know what a third party
Okay.
would come in and do, but I think we are capable of analyzing something like that just based on kind of evaluating what other counties, other cities have done using their community services officers or deputies in those situations to handle those non-emergency calls that our deputies are handling right now.
Yeah. And that would kind of look at, of these 27,000 calls, kind of who's the right type of staff member to respond to that, right? We
That's
kind of
a
get it with the
trend
calls
that, we
coming
see
in.
people, and we've actually started that, I mean, even we have 2 community services deputies now. One was initially for code enforcement, one obviously was for the short-term rental. But we find those people are actually helping out in other areas when needed. Obviously, when we had the fires, they were up doing traffic assistance with us up there. So again, those are areas that those positions require a lot less training. Their pay is reduced compared to a certified deputy. And so I think that's something that we need to take a look at to see if it's a better way of doing business.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's time to look at that and dive into, those calls and what kind of the best service model is to respond. So I'm certainly supportive of looking at that.
Me too.
Yeah,
Anything
I'm
else?
certainly supportive of it. I think it's long overdue.
Anything else?
Nope.
Then I'll end.
For the record, I support this only because it involves the cities or citizens of Depoe Bay. I again have serious concerns about the other actions that have been taken.
I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement for law enforcement services between Lincoln County Sheriff's Office and the city of Depoe Bay.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second is on the floor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimously approved. Thank you, Sheriff. All right, we move on to commissioner reports. I don't have anything to share today. My colleagues.
I have no reports.
I have nothing to
Okay.
report either.
Then we move on to public comment. Mr. Miller, did we have anything through Smart Sheet this week?
Claire, I failed to tell you that we did have input last week from Cynthia George.
Oh, that's right.
It was online and I put it
Right.
online for this week as well as written input.
That's right. You mentioned to me that the input came in right before the meeting after our deadline. So we will be sure, each be sure to review that. And now online, if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the board for up to 3 minutes on any topic, please use the raise hand function on your Zoom application now.
Just stacked.
Do we have anyone signed up for in-person testimony?
Yeah.
Anyone else here interested in that? Nope. All right, then. I'll remind everybody the board will meet next Monday, September 19th, our office staff meeting. Then the full board public business meeting is Wednesday, the 21st, I'm sorry. And both of those begin at 10 a.m. live in this room and streamed on Zoom. So until then, we're adjourned.